Tied to the Middle East, where tensions involving Iran have raised worries about supply disruptions and a renewed spike in crude prices. The Philippines imports the vast majority of its oil requirements, and a significant share of the barrels that eventually reach local refineries and fuel depots depend on shipping lanes that can become choke points when conflict escalates. Against that backdrop, the government has pointed to two parallel tracks it says could soften the impact. One is the development of additional domestic gas supply from the Malampaya service area off Palawan. The other is a set of measures meant to protect near-term fuel availability, including government-procured diesel deliveries and diplomatic assurances aimed at keeping Philippine-linked shipping moving through a critical maritime corridor. The Department of Energy has said drilling and testing under the Malampaya Phase 4 program delivered a positive result at the Kamago area, describing it as a breakthrough that could add meaningful volumes of natural gas to the country's only long-running indigenous gas project. In the account presented by officials and repeated in industry discussions, the Kamago well has been tested for production capability that could reach as much as 60 million cubic feet of gas per day, an amount that, if confirmed in sustained operations, would be material for the power plants that still rely on Malampaya. The Malampaya gas field has long been central to Luzon's power mix, historically feeding major gas-fired plants in Batangas and helping stabilize the grid when demand surges. Even as the Philippines has begun importing liquefied natural gas to cover supply gaps, the cost difference between domestic gas and imported fuel remains a major issue for consumers and policymakers, especially when global prices rise. In the narrative being advanced by energy officials, the Kamago development is not the O. NYP potential addition, a nearby prospect often referred to as Malampaya East. One has also been cited as a promising resource with significant reserves. The combined resource potential, as it is being framed publicly, could effectively double Malampaya's remaining capacity compared with what would be available without the new wells. An optimistic formulation that underscores how urgently the country wants the field to keep producing, while the energy transition and new supply options are still taking shape. Still, key technical and commercial questions remain: the difference between a successful test and reliable long-term supply, the durability of flow rates, the final estimate of recoverable reserves, the timeline for tying in new wells to existing infrastructure, and the commercial terms that will govern how the gas is sold to power producers. Those details determine whether consumers actually see relief in their bills and when. The operator and its partners have also been highlighted. TED as playing a major role in the latest drilling push. Prime Energy has been widely described as leading Malampaya's ongoing work program after changes in the consortium in recent years. The company's investments, particularly in deepwater wells, signal confidence that the service area still holds commercially viable gas, even as the original Malampaya reservoir matures. The transcripts account suggests the drilling program includes 2 new deepwater wells and an exploration well, with another exploration target said to be located roughly 30 kilometers north of Malampaya. If that next well proves productive, it could further extend the life of the gas project and reduce the urgency of replacing Malampaya volumes entirely with imported LNG. For policymakers, the stakes are not abstract. Malampaya has been repeatedly described as a key contributor to the Luzon grid, and any decline in supply has implications for prices and reliability. Gas-fired plants have often been used to support key grid because they can ramp up faster than many baseload sources. When gas supply tightens, the system may lean more heavily on other fuels, including imported coal or diesel, which can be more expensive and more exposed to global price swings. The government has also linked the Malampaya drilling results to a broader promise: lowering electricity costs. The argument is straightforward. Domestic gas delivered through existing pipelines to Batangas can be cheaper than imported LNG that must be shipped, regasified, and bought at market-linked prices. The transcript cites a comparison meant to illustrate the gap, saying local gas from Malampaya is priced at around 4.80 pesos per kilowatt hour for imported LNG. Those figures, while requiring careful context because generation cost is only one component of a consumer's final bill, reflect a real policy concern. Imported fuel can feed inflation, and high power prices hit households and industry alike. That inflation risk is already part of the public conversation. The iBond Foundation, a research group that often comments on prices and wages, has warned in the transcript that inflation could reach 6 to 7% by the end of 2026 if crude price increases persist, with possible drag on GDP growth. Whether that specific range materializes depends on many factors: global oil prices, the peso exchange rate, transport costs, and domestic supply conditions. But the warning captures a broader reality. Energy shocks rarely stay confined to gas stations. They spread through supply chains. To cushion immediate fuel supply concerns, the government has also moved to procure diesel directly. In the transcripts account, an initial shipment of 142,000 barrels, about 22.58 million liters, arrived in Luzon, with deliveries expected to continue to other terminals, including Batangas. The Department of Energy has described this kind of intervention as a way to ensure continuity for critical sectors, sue SHE as transportation and industry, especially when market disruptions threaten to create localized shortages or panic buying. At the same time, industry leaders have sought to calm the public. Ramon Ang, who leads San Miguel Corporation and is also chairman and CEO of Petron Corporation, is quoted in the transcript emphasizing how input choices affect pump prices and supply decisions. His statement is presented as reassurance that the country's refining and fuel supply chain will keep operating even if margins tighten. In the transcript, Ang is quoted as saying, asterisk Ramon Ang, the crude oil we purchase is more affordable than refined products. Asterisk, a line meant to underscore why refining crude can sometimes be a more economical path than importing already refined fuel, depending on global spreads, shipping costs, and refinery utilization. Ang is also quoted signaling willingness to absorb pain to keep fuel available, a message that plays strongly during periods when consumers fear SUD. End shortages. In the transcript, he says he is willing to sacrifice profits if needed to ensure continuous supply. That posture, whether ultimately reflected in pricing decisions or not, illustrates the political and social sensitivity of fuel crises in the Philippines, where transport costs can quickly become a flashpoint. But the most geopolitically consequential claim in the transcript is the assertion that the Philippines has secured an agreement with Iran guaranteeing safe and uninterrupted passage for Philippine-flagged vessels and Filipino-manned ships through the Strait of Hormuz. The strait is one of the world's most important oil transit routes, and any disruption there can send prices soaring globally within days. For an import-dependent country, even the risk of delays can translate into higher costs as shippers price in insurance, rerouting, and uncertainty. In the transcripts telling, the Philippine government confirmed a successful negotiation and framed it as a protective measure for oil shipments, commercial cargo, and vessels carrying Filipino workers. It also notes a condition: Iran would allow passage for countries it considers non-hostile. Those are high-stakes assertions that would typically require careful attribution to official statements from the Department of Foreign Affairs, the Department of Transportation, or maritime authorities, as well as cross-checking with international shipping advisories. Still, the broader point stands. When tensions rise in a choke point like Hormuz, governments scramble not only for fuel contracts, but also for diplomatic and logistical assurances that ships can keep moving. The Philippines' vulnerability is amplified by the concentration of supply sources. The transcript states that around 90% of the country's oil supply is imported from the Middle East. While the exact percentage can vary depending on the year and sourcing patterns, the dependence on imported oil is undisputed, and the Middle East remains a major supplier region. If shipping through Hormuz is threatened, the consequences can be immediate: longer voyages to alternative suppliers, higher freight and insurance costs, and a scramble among importers to secure replacement cargoes at premium prices. That is why the push to extend Malampaya's life has taken on new urgency. Malampaya is not oil, but it is energy security. It supports power generation and reduces the need to burn imported liquid fuels for electricity. Every additional cubic foot of domestic gas that can be produced reliably is one less unit of imported fuel exposure, one less point of vulnerability during a geopolitical shock. The question now is timing. The transcript points to first gas from the new resources being expected between early 2026 and 2027, with slightly different ranges mentioned in different parts of the narration. That window matters because consumers and businesses are dealing with pain now. Domestic gas discoveries do not translate into immediate relief. They require engineering work, regulatory approvals, and commercial arrangements, but they can shape expectations, and expectations can influence everything from investment to policy choices. For now, the story of the Philippines' energy squeeze is being written on two fronts at once. In deep water off Palawan, where companies are trying to prove the country still has meaningful gas to produce, and in distant sea lanes where diplomatic ties and security conditions can determine whether fuel cargoes arrive on time and at what cost. What happens next, whether the Kamago results hold up, whether the next exploration target delivers, whether government fuel procurement expands, and whether maritime tensions ease or intensify, will determine whether the surge in fuel prices becomes a short-term shock or the beginning of a longer, more punishing cycle for Filipino households. I can't fetch or verify the latest information from the live web in this environment, so I'm not able to do the first step exactly as written, checking current DOE releases, Prime Energy/SEC filings, Petron/SMC statements, shipping advisories, or Iran/Hormuz updates in real time. What I can do is generate part 2 as a detailed analysis and conclusion based strictly on what's in your transcript, while flagging the specific claims that would normally require up-to-date confirmation before publication. The story has 2 moving parts that feed into the same anxiety. 1, the immediate pain of higher pump prices driven by global crude volatility and shipping risk. And 2, the longer-term promise that domestic gas, if it materializes on schedule, could soften the country's structural exposure to imported fuel. Put together, it's a narrative about vulnerability and mitigation, a country that imports most of its oil, trying to buy time with emergency supply measures, while also betting on upstream drilling success to reduce future dependence. The first issue is the speed at which geopolitics NS Smiths into household budgets. In the transcript, the Middle East, particularly tensions involving Iran, functions as the trigger for a local price shock. That framing is consistent with how oil markets behave. Crude is globally priced, and even the risk of disruption in a choke point can lift futures, insurance premiums, and freight rates. For an import-dependent country, higher landed costs cascade quickly. Transport operators raise fares or cut trips. Food and consumer goods become more expensive because logistics costs rise. Small businesses absorb or pass on higher delivery and generator costs. Inflation expectations can become self-fulfilling when consumers and firms start pricing in more increases next week. But it's important to separate 3 different channels of impact that often get blended in public discussion. First is crude price movement itself. Second is the refining and product spread. Sometimes refined products spike even if crude is relatively stable, especially due ring disruptions. Third is physical availability and logistics, whether cargoes can arrive on time, whether ports and terminals can handle rerouting, and whether distributors can keep stations supplied. The transcript suggests all 3 are in play: rising prices, disrupted distribution, and the specter of shortages. That's where the second part, government procured diesel, fits in. The transcript describes an initial government shipment of 142,000 barrels, around 22.58 million liters, arriving at a terminal in La Union, with additional deliveries expected in Batangas. If accurate, that's a classic buffer stock intervention, not necessarily aimed at lowering prices directly, but at preventing a supply crunch that would cause panic buying, hoarding, and localized outages. In an archipelagic market, even small disruptions can create uneven shortages. One region flush with supply, another suddenly rationing. A government cargo, if released strategically, can stabilize distribution for prio. Rady sectors like public transport, agriculture, and critical industries. Still, the effectiveness of such a move depends on the rules for release, pricing, and targeting. If government diesel is sold at market price, it mainly supports availability rather than affordability. If it's subsidized, it can dampen inflation, but raises fiscal questions and risks leakage. Fuel diverted to non-priority users. Transparency matters. Who gets the diesel, at what price, and under what audit mechanism? Without that, the policy can become politically popular but economically blunt. The transcript also mentions a state of national energy emergency. That is a high-stakes instrument because it can expand executive powers to manage supply, direct agencies, and potentially intervene in markets. But emergency declarations can do 2 opposite things: reassure the public that government is acting, or alarm markets and consumers into expecting shortages. The messaging has to be precise, emphasizing Conti. Annuity plans, inventory levels, and clear triggers for rationing, if any, rather than broad warnings that can fuel fear. The most consequential long-term thread in the transcript is Malampaya Phase 4, particularly the Kamago, spelled variously in the transcript, well, and the Malampaya East, 1 discovery. The numbers cited are significant: a tested capacity of up to 60 million cubic feet per day for the Kamago well, and a stated reserve of 98 billion cubic feet for the nearby Malampaya East, 1 area. The transcript also claims that combined resources effectively double Malampaya's existing capacity,